Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks guys for joining us. This is really kind of where I think this is where DBI comes to life. So I'm super excited for this session. We are asking for a lot of engagement. We've got a ton of different polls that we'll be doing and really collaborating together. So just so you're aware of that. Let me figure out how my mouse here. So really, this is where we are in the process, right? We've started that intervention program. We've also started our progress monitoring for students. Now we're analyzing the data to confirm that students are in fact responding to this instruction, and we're seeing the growth in the progress monitoring. So what happens at this step in the process is we likely have a couple of students who are not growing, right? And so we're going to go through how we work with those kids.
And so you may have seen this rule before. A common way to analyze progress monitoring data is using what we call the 4-point rule. You want to see early on in the process if you need to make adjustments to better support your student. So Joanne went through a lot of progress monitoring data in detail with you yesterday, but just a quick recap. If all 4 points are above the goal line, then you may want to decide either to modify that rate of improvement, move that up to aggressive, or potentially increase the CBM level and continue on with instruction. If you have 4 data points below the goal line, that's really what we're diving into today, right? That's where we want to form a hypothesis and decide which adjustments to make. And if you've got points above and below the goal line, then we suggest continuing what you're doing for the length of the progress monitoring sessions, 9 to 12 weeks, and then reevaluating at the end of those sessions. So the great thing about Classworks is you already have that aim line. Yep, that's good. You already have that aim line or green line. So after 3 administrations, it's going to give you a prediction of how your students will perform throughout that 12 weeks. So you can use this early on to make adjustments. So in this example, you see here that the student is trending exactly how you want them to be. The student is growing. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we will reanalyze this data at the end of the 12 weeks.
So now we're going to look at, in this case, for this session today, we've got 4 students who are not growing. This is where we're going to turn that DBI into the process and make some really important decisions about what we want to do for that student. I know we had some folks in chat yesterday ask what they should do when this happens. So the 4 students that we're going to look at are Rebecca Carter, Kai, Marcus Owens, and Tara Johnson. So the first thing that you want to do once you've said, I know I'm doing a great intervention, for some reason these students aren't responding, you want to develop a hypothesis about why the students potentially aren't growing. Because remember, that progress monitoring is a really good data point that says, like we said yesterday, it's that blood pressure check. Hey, things aren't looking healthy overall, but we really want to get the whole picture about what we're doing, right? And I think we also talked about this yesterday. You want to confirm your fidelity of implementation. If you have a bunch of students that aren't responding, you may have students that aren't taking the progress monitoring with fidelity, or students that aren't working in the intervention with fidelity. So once you've confirmed that that's happening, then for your 4 students that aren't growing, the first step is going to be to get input from other people.
Okay, so who do we talk to when we're getting this input? So this is our first opportunity for some chat and audience engagement. So put in the chat, who are the different stakeholders you might pull in to determine what's going on with this student's interventions?
We all want to put in chat who teachers, counselors, parents. Yep. MTSS team members, that's great. RTI. SPED teachers, parents. Yep, you guys are hitting on this, parents. That's right. And so our data says a couple more options in this, but certainly it includes this, right? We also say you talk to the student, but like you guys said, the classroom teacher, you said the parapro, you said school counselors, you said parents, and we also might want to talk to school psychologists, right? So this is really what our data shows are the most common people that you say, hey, I need your help developing my comprehensive hypothesis about what I might want to do to change this student's intervention.
Right. And so when you pull that team together, what different types of data are you gathering on the student to form your hypothesis? So again, put in chat, what are the different types of data you might be looking at to determine how to move forward with this student?
Benchmark tests, yep. This one's harder, right? We definitely saw that in the in-person sessions. Family situation, psych eval, that's right. Grades, yep, that's right. Classwork samples, yep. Social emotional situation, definitely. Grades and Classworks diagnostic, that's right. Any new situations at home, yep, that came up a ton. That's right. So this is what, and I think you guys hit on a lot of this, school interactions with others. So that's kind of behavioral that hits on this. We want to talk to the student, get their perspective on what's going on. Grades and classroom work samples, you guys mentioned that. The diagnostic scores from the evidence-based intervention, you guys mentioned Classworks. Any student behavior, any teacher perspective on this, or any attendance issues that we have, right? These are kind of the most common things that we find. So now we've gathered our data and we decide what to modify. These are the things that NCII recommends that you look at to make a change, right? So you might look at changing the content in here. You might look at changing the methodology, so how the instruction is delivered to the student, or you might look at who's delivering the instruction and where and when it's being delivered. An important reminder here, evidence-based interventions have been proven to work, right? You guys, your district selected them for a reason because they are evidence-based. They've been confirmed by What's Works Clearinghouse. And so it's really important that you say, I'm not going to try to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. I'm going to make one change, and then I'm going to continue my progress monitoring. So as we're looking at our 4 students, we're gathering our data about them. We're going to ask you guys what that change might be, but it's not going to be a huge change, right? So these are the most popular Classworks adaptations, and these will be the things that we'll actually be selecting from as we look at our 4 students to determine which of these we think would be the right thing to do. The first is, instead of a student working in their learning progression, you might say for a little while, you want them to work on those preset science of reading or early numeracy assignments, and you might assign those to the student. You might decide that the student simply needs more time in their intervention so that they can accomplish learning more skills. You might decide to create your own custom assignments based on something that you've observed the student needs to work on before you think they're going to be successful in their progress monitoring. You might decide to look at the existing learning progression and customize some things, either by skill or even by activity type, because Classworks has so many different activity types in there. Some students respond to some things and not to others, right? Small sessions, yep, that's right. That's good feedback. You also might decide to assign the Classworks printable lessons. You might decide that the computer-based instruction isn't right for the student, or you may use our SMART goal feature and say, really what the student needs to do is really refocus, and I'm going to have them set a SMART goal to keep them focused. So we're going to come back to these with our 4 students and revisit these adaptations for them. So my mouse is crazy today, guys. So here's our first student. It's Rebecca Carter. She does have an IEP, but I do think it's important to mention that the DBI process is the same, regardless of whether or not your student is receiving Tier 3 intervention services or they're in special education. So in this case, I think 3 of our students today have IEPs and 1 of them is receiving Tier 3 services, but the process is the same, right? So in this case, her IEP focuses on mathematics, mathematical processes, and she's been assigned the level 5 mathematical processes progress monitoring, that's a mouthful, as recommended by Classworks based on her screener results. So here's the data that we have gathered about Rebecca, right? We talked to all those folks that you mentioned we gathered all these important pieces of information, right? So we know that Rebecca is connecting while she's progress monitoring and working. We know that she loves to talk about things she's already done. We know that she's got a lot of really specific interests and she likes to talk about them. She does make okay grades, but her grades are trending downward. So it's not just that she's not responding to her intervention, she's trending downward overall. Again, she's scoring better on things that were from the first weeks of school. Her work samples are pretty inconsistent depending on her attendance issues or how the unit's been structured. She struggles to stay engaged when we move too quickly from one concept to another. And she does have a little bit of an absentee issue. And then in her Classworks diagnostic scores, she performs much better in the game-based activities. So as part of our process here, you're going to gather a lot of information, right? But all of that information isn't necessarily going to be what you can use to decide how to modify the intervention. So the first thing that we want to ask you guys is, what do you think is the most important information on here, and what's going to help you really make a good database decision about what to modify in that intervention?
So hopefully you're seeing a poll flash up to you, and I think there are multiple options for this one, right, Melissa?
That's a great point. Yeah. So we're actually going to make 2 suggestions for Rebecca based on this information. But but you're just figuring out what you think is the most important information in here. So just pick them. I don't know if it's working.
There we go.
We go. This was super interesting when we did our in-person sessions. Like, we had kind of talked to folks and determined what we thought were the most important things. And then it's like all of the folks in the room had such great ideas about why everything on here really was important. So that was really interesting. Absenteeism is definitely a factor for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, great. So do we end the poll, Jen?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so I feel like you guys did hit on what we thought were the most important pieces of that, and that's on this slide. So should we stop sharing the poll?
You might have to move it since you're yeah.
Oh, I just have to move it. Okay. Bye. So the things that we thought we could really make some decisions based on were that she seems pretty focused on the past, and that may be why she's struggling to focus on today's skills. And then also the variety of diagnostic scores on her intervention, really meaning that maybe she's responding better to some types of activities than others. Those are the things that we felt related back to Classworks that would really help us make a decision, right? I think it's really interesting, a lot of these other things, but we weren't sure how we would be able to make a decision for how to modify an intervention based on that, right? So now we're going to keep this up and you're going to launch the next poll, right, Jen?
Yeah. There we go. Oops. No.
So now you're going to pick, remember that multiple choice of the most common adaptations in Classworks, what we think we might change for Rebecca's. It's not that one.
Rebecca Carter. Sorry, guys. This is saying it already.
It's this one.
Here we go. Yeah, it's just doing that thing again where I don't have the launch.
Okay. So instead of doing the, oh, here it is. The right one is up now.
Yay.
So I'll go back to Rebecca and you guys can decide, what do we think based on this information, knowing this is multiple choice, which are the things that we think will make sense? And remember, there are 2 in here for Rebecca. Oh, look, did that work? Did it just do? Yep, you guys are on this. So that's great. That's exactly right. And honestly, what we decided we would do for Rebecca, I'm going to show you guys on the next slide. We decided we're going to set a SMART goal, which it looks like 47% of you guys said that. And we also thought we'd customize the learning path, but honestly, creating a custom assignment could achieve that same goal if you wanted to, right? But we felt like we could modify, like if we go in here, just going to move our little poll, Jen. And I'm just going to move our little faces also. If we go in here and we look at Rebecca, right, we've got good information about her. She's not responding to that intervention. We can see that. We can see notes that we've made. Again, like Joanne showed you yesterday, we can click through and see how she responded. But when we go to her individualized learning path, we can see pretty clearly that Rebecca did fine on the game-based activities, but the activities that are the problem-solving activities, which you can tell because they have a grade, then a dash after them, she's really struggling with those. So our thinking was to turn off these two to let her experience ongoing success with the game-based activities. But again, your ideas are really good because you can also accomplish that by creating a custom assignment. We just thought this was a little bit of a simpler way for Rebecca to do that. Then our other thinking for Rebecca was that we would create a SMART goal with her. Now, Rebecca can create her goal herself because she's an 8th grader. But as you know, in Classworks, you can either create it for the student or they can create it themselves. But we're just thinking a goal that says to Rebecca, we're going to reward her when she asks questions about the current skills that she's learning, asks and references things that are currently in her learning path, instead of continually revisiting the beginning of the school year, might help her stay focused. So you do that by, setting up with our little SMART framework. What exactly do you want to accomplish? How will you know you met it? How will you meet it? Is it reachable? And when will you reach this? And then, of course, we can have a conversation with her about this as she's working through it, right? As you guys, I'm sure, have seen when you click view details, you can see that conversation back and forth. So that was our thinking for our first student. I'm going to go back over here to set us up for Jennifer's going to talk about our next student. Are there any? No one had any thoughts about that? Anyone disagree, feel strongly? I think people are coming into the waiting room, and that's, sorry, Jen.
No problem. Okay, yeah. So Kai's a 5th grade student. He also has an IEP. He's at a present level of performance of 3rd grade in math. That's based on his Classworks screener. And so specifically, he's working on number sense and operations, interpret multiplication in which both factors and fractions less than 1, and compute the product. And based on his Classworks data, he's been assigned a level 3 progress monitoring in operations. So what data have we accumulated about Kai to form his hypothesis? So Kai doesn't understand why he's taking probes every week, and he doesn't understand why he's working on individualized instruction that's different than some of the instruction that he's working on in his classroom. He is more engaged when he's drawing or writing by hand. He does not love the computer-based activities. He works best independently. He loves his art and music classes. He's reluctant to leave those. He's quiet and a little withdrawn. He has erratic attendance, and when he's had these long absences, his performance is noticeably poorer, and he rushes through the games and activities in Classworks or on the computer, and we'll show you how you can see that with Kai in just a few minutes. So based on all of this data that we've gathered with Kai, what do we feel like is the most actionable information on this slide where we may be able to use that to make some adaptations to Kai's interventions? Let's see if I can get Kai's poll launched successfully. There we go.
Nice. You guys nailed it with Rebecca, so.
Yep. Nice. So, you coming in. All right, yeah. Definitely nailed it with that one. So, which ones have we highlighted, Melissa? Here we go. Yep. So he's more engaged with work when drawing or writing by hand, which 62% of you chose. So clearly that tells us something about it. That combined with the fact that he is doing really poorly on the games and activities, he's rushing through those. And then some of this other information plays into that, right? But those we felt like were the two most actionable. So based on knowing those things, that he likes to write and draw, and that he's not necessarily engaged with computer-based activities. Let me go back. And what adaptations would you suggest we make for Kai's interventions? I think what we're seeing between these virtual sessions and the on-site sessions is that really there are a number of things that you could do. And fortunately, Classworks does provide a bunch of different options for helping with these adaptations that you might want to make. So perfect.
And I think that's right, though. I think there are a lot of things you can do with SMART goals that we haven't necessarily addressed with all these students. With Rebecca, we brought that up as an example, but I think you guys are right. It could be used, I mean, really with almost
likely all 4 of these students could have some kind of SMART goal related. But this is what we determined for Kai's modification. So as the majority of you said, we want to use the Classworks printable lessons. But this first point is really important. We want him to understand why he's taking the progress monitoring, right? So maybe we would share our Classworks student minute video with Kai, let him watch that, let him understand it. Another thing that was shared with in our on-site session in Birmingham was they pull up the graphs and they show their student the graph and they almost make it a game. Like, here's where you're trying to go. Look at this green line. We want to see how close we can get to that. So really helping the student to understand why they're taking these assessments is super important if we want them to do their best. But then as far as the intervention goes, yeah, we want to go ahead and use Classworks printable lessons. So let's look in Classworks at some of the data with Kai, and then we can show you where those lessons are. So we know Kai's graph was trending downward. That's why he's in this process. And again, you can see that with his scores and his absences, so many skipped progress monitorings, right? Because he's got a lot of absence. And then, you know, we can drill down to see where Kai is really struggling. But if we look at his individualized learning, that's where we're really going to see what we had said, where he's just not performing well on these game-based activities. And we've already seen as his teacher that he's more engaged with, you know, handwriting and drawing activities. So in Classworks, you do have Kai's for math. So we'll look at math. You do have activities that are printable.
I was going to show, you want me to show the activities and then show them assigned?
Yeah. So Kai, I believe his present level of performance was 3rd grade. So we might go to his 3rd grade mathematics and assign him something based on that IEP goal that we had that he was working on. So if you want to look at just a quick example of any one of these, the nice thing about these is that not only are you able to just easily print these off for the student, but you also have nice teacher resources that can help you. So lesson planning resources for each of these activities. And you as the teachers have access to all of the activities, not just that grade level worth of activities, but for applied math, it's K through 8 activities and you have them all there. And then if you want to assign these activities to your students, that's what she's showing you now.
Yeah, if you want students to do these on the computer. Oh, but we weren't going to show that with Kai. That's right.
We'll show you also a little bit later when we show you our new preset assignments, how to do that. Or also we have a lot of good help centers and 1-minute videos about how to assign specific instruction to students that we can post in the chat. All right, and then I think, who are we next?
So
Okay.
next we're going to talk about Marcus Owens, and I do not have Marcus Owens report up, so you need to give me 1 second. Here it comes. Okay. So Marcus also has an IEP. It's in reading. He's a 3rd grader who's reading at a 1st grade level, and he has been assigned the level 1 progress monitoring and word analysis. And here's the information that we gathered about Marcus. He does understand why he's progress monitoring and doing extra instruction. He's very torn about whether or not he can be successful, though. He does answer questions posed orally, but he struggles with written questions. He is a good kid, right? He's a good, helpful kid who's a good listener. But when he's got to read out loud, he definitely likes to employ some avoidance strategies there. He's got great attendance, so that's really not our issue at all. Now we have some very specific information about Marcus that we put this in here as an example because this is also data that you can use as part of developing your hypothesis, right? On the universal screener, these last 3 items are where he scored in the different risk ranges, right? He's in the low risk for phonological memory and manipulation, at risk involving printed words, blending and word recognition fluency. I'm ahead of where I'm supposed to be, guys. And his unit scores in the intervention mirror this as well, right? So these are our areas of issue with Marcus. Since I've already given away the answer, this is what we felt like was really good information that we could use. And this is where we saw this information on Marcus, right? We saw where he's at risk. And so we saw very specific things that potentially we can do to help him before we have him go back to that learning progression. So now we're just going to ask the one question, right, Jen?
Yeah. Let's see. There we go. So based on what we know about Marcus, what adaptations might we make?
Wait till we get to about 40% participation.
Nice.
But that's right. That's right. So this is exactly what we felt like. We felt like assigning the preset early numeracy assignment would be the most beneficial. Now, the idea of creating custom assignments, that could be you guys deciding early numeracy assignments or early literacy assignments that Marcus needs to work on as well. We've just created some for you as well. And again, customizing the learning path might work as well for the student. And we're always big fans of the SMART goals. So That's what we decided. We decided that he's got some very specific areas of weakness that have been identified by that screener. So instead of continuing to work in the learning progression, we're going to have him use some of those pre-created assignments to get some success there, then go back to the learning progression after that. So let's take a look at Marcus here. Move your faces again. So Marcus, we see trending in the wrong direction. We have a note that he did read aloud and was not happy at all in class today. We can see that he's not being successful with this. We see in his individualized learning that he's fine with some of these very specific skills, but this is the reading comprehension, and he just has simply bombed this, right? So this is where, and I can show you these here, we have these very specific assignments already created, and these correlate exactly to these areas inside of the report. So they have a one-to-one match for you, so you can pick exactly the ones that they need to work on. So this is how you go ahead and assign that. We'll go to my class. Then we go to instruction. And then we can, I've already assigned these two to Marcus, but if I wanted to assign it from scratch, I click it, I click next, and then I can just pick the specific student. So in this case, it would just be Marcus that I want to work on it. Then I hit assign. Then only Marcus will have that assigned, and the other students will have that skipped for them. So then that'll show up for the student right next to there. It'll say, right, the lessons just for me, or my teacher assigned lessons, and that's where they would work on that teacher assigned lesson. Does that feel good for Marcus? You guys were on top of that. So I'm going to go back here one more time for our last student so that we're all on top of it. All right, Jenny, you ready for Tara?
So our final student, so Tara is receiving Tier 3 services. She's a 6th grade student, and the Classworks screener has indicated that she's at a 4th grade reading level. So she has an intervention block for reading, and she's assigned the reading level 4 progress monitoring as suggested by Classworks. And here's what we know about Tara. She actually understands how valuable this reading block is, and she really tries to do her best on her progress monitoring and on her instruction, but her grades are a little bit erratic in other areas. She does better working independently. She likes to create checklists and stay organized. She's great at working on the computer games. She loves them. She's engaged with them. She's got good attendance, and she receives really good scores on her independent instruction, but she's not completing as many skills as we would expect her to be doing during that reading block that she has. So it's not having the impact that we would like to see. So based on this data, what do you think is the most, I guess, actionable information on this? So that's this one.
Don't worry, guys, only 2 more polls. I think they nailed it.
Yeah, great. All right, so here's what we thought that we could take action on.
And you
So
said these are the 2 that
Yep.
had the most for you too.
Yep, perfect. The two most popular. Engaged working on the computer independently, and she gets really good scores on those independent instruction that she's doing. So what we've decided based on those, actually, before we do that, we have our last poll of the day, and thank you for bearing with us on these polls. Based on those two pieces of information, what are the adaptations we might make for Tara?
This was a fun one in Birmingham. They had lots of thoughts about Tara. It was very similar to this. It was very evenly divided.
Yep. Great. Yeah, definitely. Almost completely evenly divided. But yeah, so based on the fact that we know she likes to work on these on this instruction, and that Classworks instruction, and we'll show you that in a minute, shows that she's doing well, we think maybe that she just needs some more time. So we're going to increase the dosage in this case. We think that maybe she just needs to work a little more on that intervention. But we had a great conversation on site at one of our sessions that also said, if she's not getting as much done in that time, maybe we also need to look at the quality of it, right? So within Classworks, you can really drill down and see how much time the student's actually spending on there, and make sure that, you know, they're engaged the way they need to be, and maybe they're spending a little too much time and they could be moving on and completing more units a little bit more quickly. So we can see Tara's progress monitoring, again, very clearly trending downward. And so she's still struggling with her reading, and she's doing good with those scores, but it's not having the impact on her intervention that we want it to have. But she's really killing it, right? She's 80s and 90%. So she clearly likes doing this, and she's doing well with it. But I love also the suggestion of potentially adding some custom assignments in there, maybe changing it up a little bit so that she has some of these game-based activities, and she has some of those other reading activities that are, you know, require a little more comprehension, since she clearly likes to be engaged with the computer. So there's a couple of things you can do there. And then also, again, drilling down into the time that she's spending and making sure that she's spending the right amount of time, that she maybe could complete a little bit more within her reading intervention block if she stays on task.
Yep. So those were our 4 students where we really, not only are we doing our validated intervention program for them, we are progress monitoring them. We've got our good diagnostic data that we just gathered and just worked through to develop our hypothesis. Then we decided what adaptation we're going to make to our intervention. And then finally, we don't stop progress monitoring, right? Because what we're hoping to see is, well, you've been trending this way, I'm making that change and maybe making a note in that progress monitoring about the change. Then I hope to see it have that impact that I want to make, and check that in. I think I mentioned this yesterday. NCII says in about 6 weeks. We really recommend that you're looking at that data every 4 weeks, regardless, to see if it's having the impact that you want. And so this was really the session where we were trying to really bring this to life, right? Where they say DBI is not a program, it's a process. And this is where it became really that process.